Well, I'd like to say morning everyone, welcome to the vlog, but due to lack of motivation this morning, we're talking later on in the afternoon. I woke up this morning, it was a bit of a grey sky, and I really just didn't feel inspired to get out and photograph. And I'm really fortunate. I live in an incredible, beautiful area, and I can be within minutes, well, not minutes, within sort of half an hour, I can be in the mountains, I can be by the loch side, I can be by waterfalls. But even then, still, we all suffer from lack of motivation. And it got me thinking, what is it that inspires us? What is it that pushes us out? And even just being in the great outdoors makes us feel so much better. But what are those things that push us and make us get up early in the morning for those early starts? So I'm making my way across the Glen Lyon. I've come across from Ben Lawes and come down this beautiful road that comes down through the hills. And just coming down through here, this just little scene caught my eye, the wooden bridge, the burn coming down with the falls. And so I pulled over, and it's incredible. Just as soon as you get out into the outdoors, you feel so much better. You feel so much more inspired. And it doesn't matter where you live. If you live in a city, getting out into the park and just getting that fresh air and submersing yourself in that, your surroundings, just makes you feel so much better. And once you're out, little things start catching your eye and you start noticing little details. Just being out makes such a difference. Now you would think that the amount of times that I've got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and headed out, and all the times I have never regretted, or that I can remember, regretted getting out early. It's always the best time of the day. You have the place to yourself. It's absolutely stunning light, that first sort of, just as the sun's coming up, the birds are usually in full chorus. And you would think that from that experience, time and time again, that when you woke up in the morning, you'd be just ready to go. But still, we're still hit with that lack of motivation. And whether you're an evening photographer or an early morning photographer, it doesn't matter. We still need to be inspired to get out and photograph. So this small falls here has just caught my eye, and but one of the things that I'm battling is this really bright sky above. So I'm just trying to position myself so that I can completely eliminate that sky. And it's not so much the falls that are coming off the back there, but I really love this shelf of rock that comes down and the water's cascading down it. And there's some really lovely lead-in lines that are coming in from the sides of my image here. I especially like this rock that's just in front of me, that's sort of, the water's just cascading over, but it gives a real nice diagonal from the bottom left-hand side of my image. But I was kind of hoping that these dark clouds, there's a little bit of rain and there's some dark clouds coming over, but what happens is when you're in the hills, the clouds tend to get trapped and they don't move as quickly. So I could be sat here waiting for ages for that cloud to come across. So I've positioned myself around. I might come around a little bit further, because if I can get that hill right behind the falls there, then then I won't need to include any sky at all. But the trouble is that I don't want to make it too cropped at the top, that I'm cropping too close to that waterfall. I've got a polarizer filter on just to knock back some of that glare that's coming off of the water. And I'm hoping that a slow exposure shutter speed of around about maybe sort of half a second, something like that, will just soften the water nicely, but not, I don't want to lose the texture in it, so I'll play around with my shutter speeds. But it's a lovely little scene. And I definitely think that for me, it's getting outdoors that really motivates me. It's not long from when I'm actually out and I start immersing myself in the surroundings and start losing myself in taking these images that I find my motivation. So you can see on the back of the camera, we've got this lovely rock that just comes off my bottom left there. If I move the camera, you'll see what I'm talking about. We've got this patch of bright light that's just coming through the hills at the back there. So what I'm trying to do is just lower the camera just to take as much of that out as possible. I'll leave a bit of room for cropping. I don't want to take it out completely, but I also don't want these falls at the back to just be too high. But this photo really is about this small cascade of falls coming down over the rocks here. And I like the way that this rock comes out from the left. We've got a rock just to the right where the water's cascading off. I want to keep as much detail as I can in these areas here, which are prone to really sort of blow out in the highlights and you lose all of that detail, which when you take a photograph like this, if you do lose it and it all goes white, that always tends to draw the eye into the image. So that if we can keep as much detail in there as possible, then your eye will be drawn to the back of the image, drawn into the pools across that flat plane of rocks. Anyway, I'm going to take a few shots. I'm shooting on about 1/8 of a second, f/14, ISO 160, and it's just softening that water just to give it a little bit of texture, but also movement as well. And I think that's about sort of where I want to be. I've still got plenty of detail in that water there. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit and check, but there's still lots of nice detail in there, perhaps losing some of the detail here. So I might just quicken that exposure just a wee bit, just to catch a little bit more detail. But it's nice and sharp. You can see the detail in the rocks there, and it's lovely and sharp all the way to the back of the image. And just looking here, I mean, that in itself is a beautiful image. So I'm going to take this one and then perhaps zoom in and just capture those falls cascading at the back there, because I think that makes a beautiful image with the textures of the rocks coming down from the right, waterfall on the left, and the cascading water coming down. I think that in itself is just a beautiful shot. So we'll get this one in the bag first, and then we'll get the other one. These bubbles that are being generated by the falls make really interesting patterns, especially for foreground interest. And if you can get a nice long exposure, you can really get some sort of movements and some swirls in there. So what I'm going to do is see if I can get as low as I can, a wide angle lens, and really get a long shutter speed for this particular part of the scene, and then a shorter shutter speed for behind. But really I need something like around about sort of 10 seconds to really capture this movement. So I'm going to try and put on a 6-stop ND filter with polarizer to see if I can get a long enough exposure. So let me show you on the back of the camera what I'm looking at. We've got these bubbles which are being formed from the falls, and they're just coming back up into this sort of clearing a rock here. And you can see the way that they're swirling around. This left-hand side, they're a lot slower than the right. So what's going to happen is when I do a long shutter speed, long exposure, the right-hand side is going to have a lot more movement than the left. But it needs to be fairly long to capture that. I've played around with a few settings, and I think around about 6 seconds is just giving me enough movement there just to sort of really capture the circling patterns. And then what I'm going to do is take another shot, but I certainly don't want 6 seconds for the water coming down the rocks. I only really want about sort of half a second. So I'm going to take one shot for the foreground and then another shot, blend them together in Photoshop. Otherwise, I would just lose all of that detail that's coming down across the water with the waterfall cascading down. But it's a stunning scene, and those foam bubbles really add a little bit of dynamic interest to the falls. I found that being out photographing with other people and just watching them being absorbed in what they're doing really does drive you and gives you the enthusiasm. I'm really fortunate that I get to photograph with my wife, Corinne. She's behind the camera now filming this. There's often days that I might come out and I'm not enthusiastic, but she's incredibly inspired by everything around, whether it's the small details or whether it's the surrounding hills. And that enthusiasm and motivation wears off on me. I'm just starting to get bitten by the midge now, and I like to think of the midge as a nice reminder of a good day out. So when I'm back at home and I'm scratching like mad, it reminds me of the lovely day that I've had out in the hills. Now, I've come down from the falls, and my plan was to come down to this lower part and then perhaps get the larger ones behind. But I actually really like this as a scene. There's this kind of grouping of rocks which have got a lovely colour to them. They're a real sort of like earthy brown. And then we've got the water coming down, and it kind of frames the image really nicely. I'm not sure on the sort of the middle section there with all of the sort of foam that's being generated, particularly in this thing, because I think that will just get lost in detail. But I love the water coming down, the colours that are being reflected in the grasses and the hills around. And it's interesting, you know, I haven't been outdoors for long, and I've already lost myself in what I'm doing. And that motivation has come back in bounds. I haven't even really been thinking about what I'm doing. I'm just lost in the moment. Now I've come down a little bit further down the falls, and this little sort of area's caught my eye. I'm thinking of a sort of a portrait shot. I want to capture some of these lovely rocks and boulders just in front of my image here, and then the stones and the sort of water coming down. I think as a sort of landscape shot, I lose a lot of the details and there's a lot of bland areas. But as a portrait, it makes a really nice image. And I've got this splash of green colour on the bank behind, which is really nice and sort of draws the eye in. So I'm going to take a shot here. I'm really sort of focusing on this larger stone that comes out into my image, water cascading down and around. But it's a beautiful scene. Now, sometimes we can get motivation from looking at other people's work, other photographs, but it can have that reverse effect. If we're already feeling a lack of motivation and we're looking at other people's amazing images, sometimes that can really sort of flatten our enthusiasm. We feel, oh, I'm never going to be able to take that picture, so what's the point in me going out? But those people are only getting those photos because they are getting out. They're in all sorts of weather, in all sorts of environments, going time and time and time again. And you never know when you're just going to capture that image that everything just falls into line. I definitely have more failures than I do successes. And most of my images don't end up in what I would call my portfolio. But that experience of being out and with that prospect of coming away with that image is enough to give me the motivation to get out and get photographing. Now I'm still photographing on the Z7 that Nikon kindly lent me while my D850 is being repaired. And one of the things that I found that's really frustrating is that when I set the camera to a 5-second delay and then take a couple of pics, after a little while it seems to reset itself. I'm not sure why. If any of you have experienced that, if you've got a Z7, if you know the answer to it, leave me a comment below. I would really be interested to know. I'm sure it's something that I'm doing, but it seems to be not even when I switch the camera off. I put the camera in a 5-second delay, take a couple of pictures, step away for a bit, come back, and that 5-second delay switched itself off again. So a little bit frustrating, but I'm sure it's operator error. Let me know in the comments below. I got a feeling that this might end up by being the last image of the day. The clouds are coming over, the rain's starting to come down. I don't know. I'm going to head down to Glen Lyon anyway and see the bridge. But anyway, I've come up to the top part of the falls here. And what's really caught my eye is this beautiful dark rock with the white waters cascading over. Now, I've put on the wide lens, but I really don't think it works for this image. There's no real solid focus point, no point of interest that really draws the eye in. But by putting on the 70 to 200mm lens, it's really helped to isolate some of these scenes. And just in front of me, there's a nice flat rock where the water cascades over, drops down, and a long shutter speed really helps to separate that water coming down. And I like the way the water cascades down through my image, portrait shot. So I'm going to take the image and I'll show it at the end of the vlog. But anyway, look, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the vlog. Do leave me a comment below of what it is that motivates you. I'd be really interested to hear. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Please hit the bell notification button and join me in the next episode of the vlog. Thanks for watching. Here's the image.